This is Litlington in Cambridgeshire. On the face of it, it's a quintessential English village. You see the medieval church over there, and right behind the camera, over here, there's the post office and village store, and round this corner here, the village pub. I think I know a few people who'll be interested in that. So far, so what? Well, there's more to this place than meets the eye. Because the people of Litlington believe their village may hide one of the best-kept Roman secrets in Britain. And with good reason. 180 years ago, a local vicar put a trench in this field and decided it was the site of one of the biggest Roman homes in Britain. But not only that, another dig about the same time claimed to have found a beautiful walled Roman cemetery a few hundred yards away, probably part of the same complex. So you've got this massive villa, an elaborate cemetery. This stuff ought to be in the history books. Only problem is, nearly all the records have been lost. Well, the first thing we need to do is actually find out just how accurate this plan is. Because if it's correct, then we could be looking at one of the biggest villas ever discovered in Britain. So while we wait for a geophys target in the main field, we're going to have a quick rummage in the copse to see how it fits into our Roman story.
Oh, you're not using saws, Phil. You're going straight for just bulldozing
well, no,
it out the way.
this is...
And that means we need to do a spot of light deforestation.
That's better, isn't it?
Where do you want to put it, though?
I don't...
So with finds from around the village and evidence of something quite substantial in this copse, it would seem that whatever was here covered a large area.
Oh, look, there's another one.
Oh,
Tessera.
Tessera, Hannah.
Yeah.
There's another one here. It's obviously part of a Roman pavement. I mean, whether it's in situ or whether it's just been dumped in here, is the sort of million-dollar question.
And a villa is the sort of archaeological target that should positively scream its presence on the geophys results.
Oh boy. Well, we're not seeing a villa in that data. We're not seeing anything like the responses that we should be getting.
Oh dear. Well, that's not the sort of response I was expecting. But there's a chance we've asked him to geophys the wrong part of the field. Because, as Stuart and Helen are discovering, the antiquarian map may not be as reliable as we first hoped.
There are bits of this map which actually look fine in relation to the later mapping, and there are bits which look completely wrong. It's like a half-right map is this at the moment. But when you get further south here towards this road junction, this is where it starts to go a bit wayward, because that's quite some distance from the modern south end of the village.
This map is from just one of many digs carried out here by antiquarians, vicars, doctors and the like, who were the predecessors of today's archaeologists. But although their intentions were honourable, their record-keeping could be somewhat poor.
Now, in 1913, the Cambridge Antiquarian Society comes to Litlington to visit Mr. McLaren at Manor Farm because he's found a bit of a villa, and they view the excavations and they have tea in the garden. It all sounds lovely.
Do we have the report?
Not yet, and in fact I think we may never find one because they don't seem to have been terribly impressed at what they found. They said although there was an extensive building, there were only foundations left and finds were only really pottery.
It seems crazy to me that we've got all these late 19th, early 20th century references to this site, but really no tangible written evidence. What are we going to do?
Phil, Raksha, what have you got down in the woods?
But our scratching around in the copse has just produced some lovely Roman archaeology.
There's just enough here to indicate that we do have a floor and that's where they come from.
Oh, good grief.
This really is a cracking little discovery, although it's much too early to say what kind of building this stretch of paving belongs to. This is Litlington in Cambridgeshire, and this morning in this field I was offered not just a Roman villa, but a palatial Roman villa, 300 foot by 500 foot. And the big news is we can't find it. See that geophys? There's nothing there at all except these odd trackway things. We can't even put in a trench because we haven't got any targets. Where's my villa?
Look, we're doing pretty well. We've got stuff over there in the copse. We've got a tessellated pavement there. But I will admit, we haven't so far got a massive villa in this part of the field.
So what do we do?
We're not going to give up. Instead of going for the digital method, though, we're going to try the analogue method and actually trust to the maps and see what they come up with.
What does he mean by the analogue method?
I don't know, but he's looking at me when he said it. Okay. At the moment, the only real evidence we've got that ever was a villa in this field is this one plan that was made in the early 19th century showing what looks like a courtyard villa. So what we're looking at, if we accept this as it is, and we don't know how reliable it is, that there is a rectangular villa type structure extending down towards that copse, under those houses up there and back up, if we take that as gospel. And it's the only thing we've got at the moment which actually says there might be a villa in this field.
So our first trench in this massive field goes in on the basis of a single 170-year-old map. It's hardly the most scientifically robust target we've ever had, but then again...
Hold them in. Hey! Bit of Roman roof tile. I think that's a bit of...
After the frustration of this morning, it's good to know that we seem to be in the right place.
Oh!
Oh.
Ah, no, look at that.
That's the edge.
I mean, look at the alignment. The alignment of that wall is exactly
Yeah.
the same alignment as our pavement here.
So we're going to put in a couple of trenches in the copse to see if there is potentially a bathhouse buried under all this shrubbery.
Tesserae number 1.
In the space of a couple of hours, we've gone from twiddling our thumbs to being stretched to the limit.
We've got a doorway.
A door?
Yeah.
Really?
Check it out.
Oh, isn't that fantastic?
Oh, that's brilliant. It's even invented, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So there we go, a Roman doorway. Absolutely brilliant.
The evidence we're finding in here certainly suggests we may be coming down onto something posh enough to belong to a high-status Roman villa.
Ooh, that's painted wall plaster. It's got blue and green on as well. That's absolutely fantastic.
Or maybe I spoke too soon.
Just after lunch, we put a trench in over here, even though we couldn't see anything in the geophys, because Stuart had worked out that this, on the 19th century drawing, is where the villa should be. So we thought, well, we'd dig it and see if the antiquarians were right. Although, Matt, I can't quite see a villa there.
That's because there isn't a villa in there. In fact, there's not even the remnants of a villa anywhere nearby here.
So what's this recess here?
Well, what we've got here is what the geophysics showed, which was a great big linear coming all the way through, back up there. There's a parallel one just beyond the edge of the trench there, and we've also got another ditch coming straight across it that way.
Just a minute. Isn't that Roman tile?
It doesn't tell us anything about what's going on in this trench.
The only recognisable archaeology in this trench is a medieval trackway. There's absolutely no trace of anything structural slap bang in the middle of where we expected to find our record-breaking villa. Frankly, this is a bit of a disaster.
I'm going to ask Ben the question that no one else seems to have the bottle to ask you. Suppose there isn't a villa here at all.
I think we've definitely got a villa. I mean, you don't get that amount of building material, you don't get the tessellated pavement, the wall plaster, all these finds without there being a villa here. There must be a villa here.
What about the one tangible piece of evidence we've got, the copse? What's going on there?
Clearly an important building, or part of a building. I mean, have a look at this. I mean, we could be talking about a bathhouse, for example, typically a bit peripheral or you know, towards the edge of the area because of the fire risk. Could it be that it's one of the reception rooms? Nice mosaic in there. Could it be even one of the main living spaces? We haven't got quite enough to go on. It might then acquire...
Well, Ben's big, shiny, graphic imaginings are all well and good, but they're quite a leap from the reality of the site that so far produced quite a lot of nothing.
Our villa is over there where those houses are. In fact, quite a lot of it's probably under those houses. But somewhere in this field, we think there might be a rare walled Roman cemetery which would be associated with the villa, except nobody really knows precisely where it is, do they?
Well, I think we do now.
Oh, there was triumph in that tone. Why?
Well, we've done the magnetic survey, and look, Ben's got the results here. This ditch here turns through a right angle, and I just wonder whether that could be the boundary of the cemetery.
But back in the copse, there's been a breakthrough, and Phil now thinks he is digging a bathhouse.
But now we got down here, we've got this concrete type block in here. Now this is, well, I'm sure it's in situ. It's not a piece of loose debris.
You've got, I mean, it's definitely, yeah, I mean, it's definitely sort of, you know, say brick stroke tile.
So what you're trying to say is, I think you are right, Phil. I think you do have a bathhouse.
You might be right, absolutely. Let's hope so.
Get him in.
And that means weeding on an industrial scale. We've now got just one day to get to the bottom of Roman Litlington.
You want to come and have a look and see what we've done to your wood?
What have you done to our...
Well, we've just given it a bit of daylight, you see. You've got to put a bit of daylight in here.
Let's just hope the locals are still talking to us by this time tomorrow. At the moment, Phil suspects that at some point, the original floor of this building, which may or may not have been a plunge pool, had a hypercaust, a heated floor system built on top of it. So far, so good.
There obviously has got to be a hypercaust. Logically, there's got to be a hypercaust in here somewhere.
Only if it is a bathhouse. And we don't absolutely know that for certain, do we?
Oh, dear.
It might be.
But Tony's going to love this when we change our opinions yet again. He knew we would.
Yeah, there's still Roman, bits of Roman stuff coming out of there. I just had a piece of tile out of it.
And if dealing with one antiquarian site wasn't enough, there's the small matter of the walled cemetery that we suspect may be associated with our Roman building.
Jackie, can I come in?
Yeah, sure, come down the steps.
What is it you've got?
Well, we know that in this field, this cemetery was discovered in about 1820 by gravel quarry diggers. And they found the cemetery, the antiquarians came in, they dug out what they wanted, and they carried on digging gravel out of here for quite some time. And then they would have backfilled everything the holes they'd left behind. And I was getting really despondent yesterday because we weren't finding any bits of material at all. And fantastically this morning, at about this level here, I turned up a whole load of human bone.
Oh, fantastic.
We've got bits of femur and bits of tibia with the leg bones. And even better, we had a piece of pottery turnip which has been dated at late Iron Age, early Romano-British.
So you're sure they're Roman bones?
Yeah, this is what they left behind of the material from the cemetery that they didn't want to take away.
John, looks like you were right. There's a cemetery here after all.
Yeah, we knew it was here. It had to be on the basis of our results.
Don't crow.
No. What we've done this morning is expand our survey back in this field.
So we're putting in one final trench over John's potential mausoleum, as it would be fantastic to establish that at least one Roman tomb has survived the 18th century gravel quarrying.
This looks pretty solid. Here's the wall. That's solid, it's coming down. Solid, solid. I think that might be the base of something.
So it would seem that we may have at last uncovered some solid evidence of the Roman cemetery. And with only a few hours to go, it looks like we may have finally got a handle on this blasted villa.
Oh, you got your floor surface here.
Really?
Yeah, look in that corner. See how much more solid that is?
Oh, yeah?
Oh, what timing.
Well, even I can tell that's a human skull there.
Yeah.
There was also, in there...
Ah.
That.
Yes, that looks awfully like a coffin nail, doesn't it? Yes. Yeah. This is intact, in situ. It's not redeposited. This is where the guy went in. We've got somebody laid on their left side, facing that direction.
With Matt's trench confirming the presence of the mausoleum shown in John's geophys, it's probably safe to suggest at least one or two other graves may also survive beneath this field. I think we can safely call that a result.
Have you got any ideas what it could be?
One time in my life when I need a Romanist, and there's never one here.
But even at this late stage, the Romanists are continuing to frustrate Phil's quest for a final decision on what's in the copse.
What is going on?
Well, I don't know. That's why you're here to tell me.
Right, OK. Well, knowing what's happening in a bathhouse that hasn't been dug by someone and one that's obviously been dug into and elements removed, elements explored, taken away, that's two different things, really, isn't it?
I mean, it is a bit of a blow to the stomach, though. I mean, we've shifted a lot of muck today, and we've worked hard. And at the end of the day, to turn round after all that graft and say we haven't got the foggiest idea, that's a bitter pill to swallow.
I don't think we're saying we haven't got the foggiest idea.
Well, that's what you were saying to me, isn't it? What is it?
I'm saying
then?
it in
what is it
more
then?
words.
What is it then?
We've got thick deposits of plaster, and it looks like they've made a concerted effort to make some of these rooms perhaps watertight, or at least to consolidate them.
So is this a bathhouse?
Yes.
Well, there we go then. I'm happy with that.
This finely decorated bathhouse would have been a focus for any villa. And thanks to the results from the test pits and the bits of radar John could get from the back gardens, we think that the villa would have sat roughly in the area now occupied by these houses. But truthfully, that's about it. We can't really say what the villa looked like or what its relationship is to the cemetery we've discovered.
So you may think that the great villa of Litlington doesn't exist, but we'd like to show you something else. Come over this way.
It's been a frustrating and at times an infuriating 3 days here, but at least the people of Litlington now know what was going on here almost 2,000 years ago.
We do know that in parts of this building there were some really expensive floors. We've found not...
And in spite of some people's misgivings, I have to say this site proves the benefits of digging into the past.
You do have a villa, we believe it's under there, and you have a bathhouse which hopefully generations of children will be able to visit and learn more about the Romans from. So thanks ever so much for coming, and we had a good time. I hope you did too. Thank you.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses, and more. Please join us on this exciting journey. We need more support to make more episodes.
We're here, next to a science park on the Colworth estate in rural Bedfordshire. This field is the local Archaeological Society's pride and joy, because it's stacked with Roman finds, like this fabulous piece of gold jewellery. But what's odd is that as far as I know, we're miles from any Roman road. Why stick a massive Roman house here in the middle of nowhere?
To try and answer that, we're going to need all the brains we can muster. Lloyd, you asked us here, didn't you?
That's correct, Tony.
And you work in that science park?
I do indeed.
What do you do?
I'm an ice cream scientist.
What does that involve?
Well, for me, it involves working with the ingredients and the formulations, how we put together ice cream to deliver the properties that people want.
So if I put my ice cream into a cone and the cone stays stiff even though the ice cream's melting, that's down to you?
That's the sort of thing we work on, Tony, yes.
You are a great man.
Typically, Roman villas are massive structures with whole wings full of rooms and a very clear footprint. Then add on the odd luxury dining room with mosaics and painted wall plaster, central heating, even an ensuite bathhouse, and it's no wonder this field's full of rubble. Picking it up on geophys should be a breeze.
Look at all this lot. Over the last few years, the ice cream people and all the other volunteers have managed to glean over a ton of Roman material off our field, which means that Helen and Philippa, who are in our incident room over here, the local cricket pavilion, have really got their work cut out. Bit of a treasure trove for you, isn't it?
It is, yeah, and the first thing that strikes you when you begin to open a few bags is the high quality of the stuff from here. We've got a lovely spoon, which has got great white metal coating, still intact. And then these horse harness mounts, now they're really heavy and chunky, they're really top-notch things. The brooches are absolutely fantastic too, and then the pièce de résistance is this gold piece of jewellery, very rare, which I think is a link from a necklace. That's fantastic. But the other thing that hits me is how few objects there are, which I think is really very weird compared to the enormous amount of coins behind me.
This is truly bizarre. This field is stacked full of finds, and yet the geophysics can't find any trace of a big stone structure. And now I'm doubly baffled, because in spite of that, we seem to be opening a trench anyway.
This is, for us, a test pit, really. So I think once we take this first one a bit steady.
It's lunchtime on day one, and we've opened our first trench here in the middle of our site. This has got to be the most closely observed bit of field we've ever looked at on Time Team. We've had magnetometry on it, we've had resistivity, radar, and none of them seem to me to have come up with anything at all. So what do? We put in a trench anyway, and not just any old trench, a really, really long one. John, why have you put a trench in here? Desperation, panic, boredom?
No, not at all. You're right, we didn't get a clear building plan, but we still had all this noise in the magnetics, and so we needed to investigate what's going on, and the trench has come up trumps.
Absolutely, and the archaeology is good. I mean, you see, at this end here, it looks like we've got this big area of clay, which we're thinking might well be the natural. And then somewhere along here, oblique to the actual trench, you can see we've got big lumps of bone, we've got rubble and stone. It's very, very dirty. There's black material, and it sort of dies out somewhere in here, but only somewhere. I'm not sure about that front end.
So there is archaeology here?
I mean, yes, there's archaeology in the trench, but what worries me, Tony, is it doesn't look like a monumental Roman building.
So everything that Phil just said is wrong?
I don't disagree with you, Phil, but I don't see a building.
So it could be the geophysics is right.
Well, it couldn't really be wrong, could it? There's nothing on it. I thought we were here to dig a Roman villa, but instead we put in our first trench to investigate the noise on John's geophysics. And now we're opening a second trench to find the end of a ditch. Brilliant. And if that doesn't work, Neil's already thinking he may need to open a third trench between the other two. Genius. Well done, lads. Though he might not need to, because back in trench 1, I think we've just got lucky.
Yeah, I mean, it's one big roof tile, but it's absolutely fresh. I mean, this material has not been broken up by the plough.
But that end, look.
No, and that's box flue, isn't it?
That's your hypercaust, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, it's pretty clear. We've got some really big roof tile. We've got underfloor heating system. Yeah. You know, we've obviously got a major Roman house here.
Well, if we hadn't found something in a 10-metre long bit of trench, we'd have been in serious trouble. So, while the search for our grand Roman villa continues, over in trench 2, Bridge is digging the exciting ditch that runs round our site.
What have you got? There's particularly these three bits of iron here, and they look suspicious to me like hobnails from the bottom of boots.
Yeah, you're right. They've got that curved over surface on the head, haven't they, that would stick out from the leather.
But also found with them is all these little bits of bone. Now, and in fact, we've still got some in situ here with little bits of charcoal and burning and that kind of thing around here.
Well, it could be a burial, couldn't it?
Given we've got some hobnail boots, and I'm not saying that 3 hobnails make a boot.
But they are a classic thing to find in a Roman burial, aren't they?
They are.
So maybe we've found exciting evidence of a Roman burial. Or maybe just a boot. But it's not all good news, because in spite of the initial excitement in Trench 1, we can't find a structure. Plenty of broken roof tiles, but no villa. So Neil, who's definitely not panicking, has decided to open a third trench. It's going in between our first 2 trenches, where John's equipment registered a massive noise that we're hoping indicates a central villa building.
Just a skim, please.
Philippa, what do you reckon on this? It's just come up from Phil's trench.
I can tell who the emperor is. It says Constans on there, and that can actually be dated to just 1 year.
Which is?
347 to 348.
So where does that go in your pile?
It fits just here.
Well, you've got a lot of coins in that area, haven't you?
Yeah, there are quite a lot from the period 330 to 348, but if you look over here, there's loads more. We've got huge numbers from the late 3rd century.
Yes, it really tells a vivid story, doesn't it? Right through from the beginning of the Roman Empire, all through the 100s and the 200s, there's virtually nothing. And then suddenly it really spikes, and there's a real coin presence right until the end of the Roman Empire.
And this is a really exciting profile because even if you can't find a villa outside, we've definitely got one here on the table because this is a typical profile for a Roman villa.
Which makes it all the more mystifying that we can't find it in our field. Though Phil has been getting even more broken tiles in his trench, all we need now is a building.
Before it was fired.
What you got there, guys?
We've got an inscribed tile here that came out of this trench. A few letters I, G, possibly an L and a V.
I mean, you know as well as I do, if you see a bed of new laid concrete, somehow or another, you've got a right in it, haven't you?
Have you just about finished that trench now?
Pretty much. Good story. Cracking piece of archaeology. We have a building. We have land divisions and everything else. Look, we've got a ditch running through there, and we've got a ditch running through there, so we've actually got this area of the field segmented off. And setting the angle of these two ditches, you've got what I think is the end wall of a building, and joining that building to that ditch, we've got an overflow drain that comes down through there. Well, it's a great little piece of archaeology for a very small area.
So what kind of building do you think it would have been?
I think it's a timber frame building. I think that slot is actually a beam slot to take the base of a timber frame building. I think the walls would have been made of clay, and then a roof. You can have a tiled roof. We got tiles off this side. So I think we've got a perfectly good building here within a ditch sort of land division.
Can you give any kind of date for it?
No, but you can, because I gave you a coin this morning that came off the spoil tip.
You did, didn't you? 348 AD.
See, you knew the answer all along, didn't you?
So what are you going to do now?
Basically record it, close it down. It's been cracking though.
Fantastic. On a site where we're looking for a grand multi-roomed villa, we've found the tool shed. Well, it's a start. Back in Bridges Trench, the finds are now looking less ritual and more everyday.
Well, to be honest, I have seen things like this before on the hardware counter of my local shop. I mean, I think you're right. It is quite hinge-like, but I'm thinking more furniture hinge rather than something like a buckle plate. So there are no notches in the corners for a buckle.
But from this area here, we've now had the hobnails, we've now had the animal bone, we've now had the cremated bone. I feel as though we're...
All human life is here.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
This is the rubbish tip of the site, potentially.
It may be the rubbish tip, but it's telling us all about how they lived.
I'm tempted to say a rubbish tip sums up this dig. We've had tantalising glimpses of the people who were once here, but it's so frustrating that we still can't find the place they were living in. Neil came bouncing up to me at lunchtime and he said, Tony, you know those 30-year-old photos of that lost stonework? Well, we've put a trench in, not exactly where Lloyd's friend said, because we had some geophysics results which meant that it looked like we got a better target a little bit further over. But it's great because we're down on the money, we've found the missing stonework. Haven't we, Neil?
No, we haven't, Tony. The stones you see there, I thought, look very much like those stones there.
Yeah.
But the more we've exposed, where Phil's digging now, it gets more and more random. We've exposed it up there, it looks more like stones rather than a surface.
I don't think I've ever seen so much random stone in one trench.
And we can't find the wall that Glyn found in his trench.
It's 4 p.m. on day 2, and we're still nowhere near finding this villa. In Trench 1, we've got some sort of wooden shed from the 4th century. Trench 2 is a rubbish tip full of hobnails and bits of old furniture. In Trench 3, all we've got are broken tiles, a load of stones and evidence of burning. And in Trench 4, where we're trying to find one of the villa walls, nothing. We've reached crisis point. Time for a council of war.
What we know is that there is a stone building, or at least a stone part of a building on this site that had a hypocaust.
Yeah, but that's not much to know in 2 days, is it? It's like we haven't got anything tangible at all.
Well, I think we have. I mean, we've clearly defined this enclosure now. And on day one, I said I hoped that we'd get noise, as I call it, in the magnet.
Yeah, all right, you've got noise, but no structures at all.
No, and that is the whole issue. We can't see the structures with the radar and with the res. And so, to me, it says one of three things. It's ploughed out totally, we haven't gone down deep enough, or as Neil says, we've only got a small stone building and the rest of it is timber framed.
We've certainly got timber buildings, Tony. Where fill is, we've got clear evidence of timber structures. So maybe we're wrong to be thinking a monumental stone structure. Maybe we've got a series of timber buildings, one of which had a stone room to it. Let's extend that trench in both directions. Let's prove once and for all, is there a stone structure in this area?
While we extend trench 3, John looks like he's had enough. He's moved away from all the confusion to geophys an area further down the field, and I don't blame him.
The dark and the light.
That's Roman there, look.
Yeah.
A little bit of a rim, look. Just turning over a little plain rim. Well, let's pull back again then, Ian.
This stuff is repulsive. If I'd known how nasty it was, I wouldn't have come back to help.
In Bridges Trench, though, the mud is the least of our troubles. Certainly compared to working out what the archaeology is doing.
What are you thinking?
Well, what seems to be happening is we've got two sort of distinct phases going on. So we've got that dark material there that you've been digging, and that seems to be consistently bringing out pottery of that 3rd, 4th century date. And then, can you see that area just along there?
The yellow.
That's it. I mean, that's where we were getting the cremated bone from yesterday, the hobnails, and the pottery seems to be sort of really going back about 100 years. We seem to be having a start date of about the 2nd century.
So, when do you think the ditch was dug?
Well, at the moment, I would put my money on it being dug about the 3rd century.
Oh, as late as that?
Yeah. But what's really nice is that we seem to be starting to get evidence of what's actually going on inside the enclosure, besides the ditch. This corner's a great one to look in. The little circular patch here, that is looking very typical of a small post hole. So
you're thinking wooden structures?
Well, that would be typical of wooden structures, small structures, something that could be associated with small settlement or something to do with industry and outbuildings.
Bridges Trench sums up this dig. On day 1, it looked like a burial, then it wasn't. Yesterday, it changed to a rubbish tip. And now she's got wooden workshops. And this is the same field where all the evidence told us we should be finding a huge Roman villa. Back over in Matt's trench, the signs are looking, dare I say it, promising. They've done a good job cleaning up around this area of burning, haven't they?
They have, like, very clearly now. I think you can see where the tiles are, coming around in an arc from where Matt is, coming out here, comes around here, I think it ends there, back up in a straight line there, and then back round. And do you know what I think, Tony? This looks to me like a classic tile kiln, a place where they're actually making the tiles, with Matt in where the fire is, the hot gases coming round, and a floor on the top, and all your tiles piled up above it.
So rather than having a villa, we might actually have a factory.
I mean, that'd be ironic, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But Matt, how's it looking in there?
Well, if it's a kiln, it's a very well-made kiln. I mean, look at that stonework.
Oh, yeah.
Does that look familiar to you?
It's very similar construction, isn't it?
Yeah, we've got 3 courses of nicely faced stones there. They're coming down, and you've got a corner as well coming back.
These are the photos that were taken 30 years ago?
Yes. It could be the stoke hole, but I mean, it doesn't look very burnt to me.
No.
The problem I've got is the magnetic responses don't say kiln.
Really?
They're not strong enough. There's clearly a lot of burning going on, and that's reflected by the magnetism. Could we not be looking at an apsidal end of a building that's been robbed out and filled in with tile?
When you say an apsidal end, that's the little bubbly bit at the end of a Roman villa.
Absolutely. And I wonder, could that be the corner of the building?
Now, if this was the firebox of a kiln, there'd be really intense heat. They'd be scorched red. No evidence of burning whatsoever. So maybe what we've got, Tony, is like you said, a little apsidal bubble end, comes out, steps out where Mac's hand is. Now, look, come back this way.
Yeah.
In this new trench, we've now got this really fine mortar floor, which Helen's been exposing.
Yeah.
And then we've got, look, artefacts. Samian wine cup. Hardly seen that at all on this site.
So that would be something that someone with fairly high status would drink out of, wouldn't it?
Yeah, this is where people are living, not just working, they're actually living. Keep coming back.
Oh, we've got a wall, haven't we?
Well, I hope so. Got a very clear edge across here. Lots of infill. If we're lucky, get some of this out. Rob a trench, back wall the house, and then look what we've got here. This really nice, very fine little glass wine goblet. Again, late Roman, quite high status, unlike anything else we've seen on the site so far.
So it looks more likely it could be a villa.
It does, but give me another hour.
We've only got 2 left. So finally, we've decided there's a curving wall of a building in Matt's trench, and next door, in the new trench we've just opened, there's a mortared floor and the back wall of what we think is a high-status room. Well, it's starting to look like a villa, just not with the fancy mosaics and wall plaster we'd expected.
The lustre, sort of the shine, is incredible on this ring. It's just so beautiful.
Over in the Fines tent, the girls are being, well, a bit girly.
What type of person would have owned it?
That kind of jet ring was only worn by women, and only by women in Britain. For one thing, it would have been saying she was a woman of some means, but also it would have been saying, or seems to have been saying, she was a woman of childbearing age.
Right.
Because they seem, from burials, only to be found with women within that age group.
So this would be a real display of her status and also what role she's playing in the society that she's living. Do you know what? If it wasn't so fragile, I think I'd be tempted to wear it.
Despite the chaos everywhere else, Phil can at least confirm the story in Trench 5.
We are now standing in the middle of an Iron Age roundhouse. And it extends from where Tracy is. I mean, she's pretty much on the wall line, about 4 metres radius, going round there and then back in front of where Mike is. Now, have a look at the section here. You see these cobbled surface here? Those are actually stones that have been laid down to actually make the floor of the roundhouse. This is the surface on which the Iron Age people would have walked.
So how does all this relate to our Roman stuff?
We've actually got continuity. People living on the same site for literally hundreds, if not thousands of years. The first people that came here were the Iron Age people. And they would have had the chance to put their fields in, their droveways, and they would have actually had a whole landscape here, which the Romans would then have adapted when they built their houses here.
So in a final effort, Neil's extended Trench 4 to find a wall line that he hopes will link up with the apse in Trench 3. All eyes are now on Ben and Neil to see if they can finally locate this elusive villa.
OK. Well, Ben, this has been a bit of a frantic last-minute exercise. I mean, what do you think we got?
I think we've got it. I think the key to it is this yellow clay. I think it's a bedding material. I think they've laid this down to create a platform and put the building on top.
The fact this is so similar to the material that Matt's getting over there does suggest that we are dealing with the same structure, doesn't it? And, you know, we always thought it was quite small to start with, but as it's gone on, it's got kind of bigger, and it's actually quite a respectable size now, isn't it, really?
Well, this is quite a spread of material here, isn't it, now? We're looking at something big and rectangular.
Our time is up. So, has it all been worthwhile? Neil, it's 5:45, day 3. Have we got a villa?
Yes, we have. Quite a respectable one as well. About 20 metres long, tiled roof, stone walls. Perfectly respectable villa.
And respectable's right. Rather than the grand multi-roomed villa we'd expected, we found a modest country house instead. After 3 days of agony, we've got the stone wall of a timber-framed building with an apse at one end. Inside that, a dining room with a mortared floor. And next door, a wooden outhouse, all built in the late Roman period on a site where people had already been living for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Time Team is 100% independent and funded by our incredible fans. Want us to make more episodes? Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models, masterclasses and more. And you get to have your say in the process as we develop new sites.
This is Withington in the Cotswolds, an area of outstanding beauty with a lot of rich farmland and some very classy houses. In Roman times it seems to have been pretty much the same, because 200 years ago ploughmen somewhere around here discovered a huge villa. Excavations revealed some exquisite mosaics, but no one was able to date the villa and there's no record of exactly where it was. But that's just the beginning of our story. 200 metres below the villa field is this lovely little spring, and guess what? Roman mosaic and Roman tile have been found here and in this field over here. No one's dug here, but the two sites are too close together not to be connected. Could the big villa over there have had a huge complex of buildings down here?
I think it could, but I'm more interested actually in the spring which is under the bush over there. This is called Withington by the Wall Well, which rather suggests it was, perhaps named in the Saxon period. And we know that Romans, when they come in, they often take over pre-existing sites like springs, which are religious interest, and put temples and turn them into their own religious sites.
Temple?
Well, maybe, but this is a very unusual location. It's very wet down here. There's a lot of water about. It's going to flood. I think it's much more likely that the main villa is further up the slope, but perhaps this is the predecessor, the early villa, which was then replaced by the later villa further up the slope.
David, what about these bits of mosaic? Do they give us a clue?
Well, these could belong to an early villa, but I think it's more likely a bathhouse. So we could have an elaborate bathhouse associated with a villa, either down here or up there, and perhaps we could have a swimming pool associated with an early villa.
The important thing which I keep going back to is what is the relationship between what is happening down here and the really big villa up there?
All right, if you were all gambling men, which I know that none of you are, what are you going to say this is?
Temple.
I'd like a temple. Early villa.
Villa.
2 all.
Early villa and bathhouse.
Bathhouse,
With a swimming pool,
villa,
perhaps?
temple, swimming pool. We're not going to know till we start digging, are we? Get going, Phil! No sooner has Phil got the turf off than mosaic pieces start appearing.
Got our first one, look.
Ah,
Matt.
nice.
Tessera.
Just out the topsoil.
Yeah, what doesn't matter. It proves Roger wouldn't plant in them. Oh look, there's another one.
Popping out all over the place.
Yeah.
The villa was excavated by an eminent antiquarian called Samuel Lysons, and that's the problem really, because he seems to be more interested in chasing mosaics than he was in working out the extent of the villa. So our first job's going to have to be to find it. But John, we've got these zonking great pylons here, aren't they going to get in your way?
It shouldn't be too much of a problem. These instruments are designed to filter out that sort of noise.
There are so many tesserae, or pieces of mosaic, coming out in the lower field that Phil's put the machine away to avoid any damage to the archaeology.
In front of your spade, that one.
Yeah, another one there, nice one. That's loads, you found loads, and all I've done is topsoil from there to there. Found about 10.
Yeah, but what we want is to get them in a floor, man. That's what we want.
We've barely been going 5 hours. Phil says he's found something to bring me out in goose pimples. What you got?
Oh, look. This is what we got. We got a mosaic. Look. There it is. Isn't that absolutely incredible? And look, it goes right the way across there. It's still going there. Look, it's still going. Look. There it goes, and you can see. So, there it is.
Let's have a go, so we can find it.
Go on.
On the other end of the tree.
See, there it is.
Blimey, O'Reilly. It's still here.
2 square metres already.
Wow.
I know. And of course it's going back in through there. And the further it goes back in there, the better protected I think it's going to be. Because I think here, we're right on the edge of where it's been taken away by the ploughing.
When we say a Roman mosaic, this is just white with the occasional bit of red in, isn't it? It's not pretty.
Oh, come on, Tony. What do you mean it's not pretty? Look, it's a Roman mosaic. How often do you find a Roman mosaic just like that on day one?
Very, very rarely. Geophiz, who've split into 2 teams, have a hunch there's also a villa down here by the river. Their first magnetic results told us where to dig,
Now, by using resistance, they should be able to pinpoint the walls and the outline of any building that may be here. Our first trench in the upper field has delivered good archaeology, but we can't begin any evaluation work on the scheduled villa until we're sure that we found it.
Ridge, where are we?
We're on a Roman wall.
Oh, yeah.
You can see it's completely running off in that direction, and we've got two faces, one running up here and one on this side here. It's measuring about 50 centimetres across. But the problem is, what's going on either side of it? We've got this really dense material here. We've got various things coming out of it, compacted material. Look, we've got here tesserae coming up. And we've also got a few bits of this grey-ware Roman pottery.
Oh, look, even licenses beer bottle.
I don't think that's Roman.
By the end of our first day, we found more archaeology than we often see in 3 days. There's even a second mosaic up the other end of Phil's trench. The problem, as always, is understanding what's going on.
What we've actually got at this end of the trench, I think we're outside the building, and you can see we've got the collapsed roof which has come sliding down out here. Here's the main back wall or front wall of the building. This we now know is a corridor going through, so your straight edge becomes part of the next wall which has been robbed out. And now inside here we've got the main rooms of the building with a collapsed mosaic.
Where's the mosaic, Matt?
We've got one piece there, that bit there, and that long piece going across there.
So it's quite extensive, isn't it? So what are we going to do here tomorrow?
Well, we've got John's new geophysics. This has got the resistance on it, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think what's exciting about the results is when we'd only got the magnetic, we thought we might have just a simple, maybe 3-roomed villa. Now we've got the resistance. It clearly shows that the rooms extend in this direction. It's much bigger and more complex than we thought.
So we're going to do a bit more with this area tomorrow and then target a trench somewhere in the middle there. Probably a 10 by 10, something like that.
And what about our villa up there?
Well, the big news, Tony, is we've actually found Licenses Villa, but the problem is we don't actually know where we are in it. So we're going to get a trench across it tomorrow. Let's work out where we are on his plan.
The Romans were renowned for their water engineering. It seems odd to go to such trouble to bring fresh running water down to these buildings from a spring further up the valley when the river was so close. In the lower field, our Roman experts might have the answer. They've been looking at the finds from this trench, and they're now convinced that the building was a bathhouse. A basic Roman bathhouse had 3 rooms: a warm room, a hot room to sweat out your dirt, and a cold plunge pool to cool off. They think we're digging in the hot room.
Oh, come on, how can you tell that from one trench?
Because it's got distinctive types of tile, including this one, which is a voussoir, which is the one of these box tiles forming the vault in the ceiling.
So you literally get a tube of boxes going around the vault.
Allowing the hot air to circulate up the walls and around the ceiling.
So this sort of odd shape is deliberate?
Oh, yes.
That is incredible. So that's it?
And we've even got a bit of the vault. This is a tufa, nice light limestone, so you can get the whole of the stone vault, but half the weight. So you get a really good stone vault instead of a wooden roof, which would rot in a hot, steamy room.
So is this the vaulted sort of roof that has caused our mosaic to collapse in?
Highly likely, yeah. And presumably it all belongs to the 4th century. That's what the coins are saying anyway. That does it. Because I've got a piece of box tile here from a wall box tile, which has roller stamp decoration and is almost certainly 1st or 2nd century, implying therefore that we may have an earlier bathhouse on the site.
So this decoration is literally put on with a roller.
Correct.
You get the piece of clay and you
as opposed
imprint.
to a comb decoration, freehand comb decoration.
Hey, this is really good, isn't it? Really, because it looks as though we've got not one bathhouse, but 2 bathhouses.
Yes.
I need to get my head round this. David and Richard are saying that we've got 2 phases of bathhouse here 300 years apart. And as this might be a hot room, could there possibly be a hypercaust, an underfloor heating system, right here under the rubble?
This is all made up ground.
Loose stone.
I think what they've done is they've dug a slot into the side of the hill to take the stone away.
Yeah.
And that's what John was seeing on the geophysics. The thing of it is, it's not all doom and gloom, because we do actually have some preserved Roman archaeology in here.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we've got tesserae in there, look.
Got it.
And animal bone. So I think what's happened is that literally this quarry has chopped away all the Roman archaeology.
Last night we wanted to close down the lower field. We've solved Roger's molehill mystery. We're convinced it's a Roman bathhouse, complete with collapsed mosaic floors. Now we can see how the rooms of the Roman bathhouse related to each other in this lower field. Next door to the plunge pool, Matt's beginning to uncover what we suspected all along.
David, come over here a minute.
There was a hypercaust here, an underfloor heating system. So this must be the hot room.
An in situ bit of the bathhouse. If you just pop down there. Look at this.
Oh, definitely. That's there, the peelie for the floor.
This stack here still in situ.
Stacks of tiles called peelie supported the mosaic floor, allowing hot air to circulate underneath and through flues in the walls.
We've got, what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 at
Five,
least.
yeah, and they're still
6
going down
stacks
as well.
At least.
Yeah, we're getting down there, and there's rubble and stuff.
No sign of the floor yet?
Well, we've got bits of this
That's the
collapsed floor,
that's
yeah.
the collapsed floor. And we've got a bit of voussoir here.
Yep, but the bottom of this, I can't see how far down it is actually going. Bits of tesserae coming out all over the place.
You may find another stack somewhere
Oh,
here.
right, so close.
Yeah, well, they're sometimes separated by roughly 30 centimetres. That's good.
Lovely.
Good.
Thanks.
At last it's coming good in the upper field. After all the hours of geophys and collective head scratching, they've stumbled on the remains of a mosaic, and alongside is the decisive clue. A mosaic has been lifted from here. And who else would have done that other than our old friend Samuel Lysons?
This is the mosaic.
You mean this is this?
That's right. The problem we've had for 2 days is that we've been chasing Lysons. Was his rooms running in this direction, or were they going in that direction?
So where would the Orpheus mosaic have been?
That would have been under the grass at the far end of the trench in that direction.
Well, it's been a struggle.
Yes.
Thank goodness I was able to chivvy you on, otherwise we might never have worked it out.
It's all down to you.
It's disappointing that we didn't find more of the Lysons villa that we assumed would be easy to locate. The quality of these mosaics alone tells us that this was an impressive 4th century villa occupied most probably by wealthy yeoman farmers, the early ancestors of England's medieval knights. Yesterday, back in the lower field, the experts thought that there were 2 bathhouses on the site, one earlier than the other, and today Matt's found the concrete evidence.
We've got this huge chunk of opus signinum concrete, but as you can see, it's got this lovely kind of curve on the edge. You know which part of the...
Oh, yeah, so I know exactly what this is. This is the first floor for this room, and it's part of the same phase as the concrete that you've got on the concrete floor that predates the mosaic.
Right, so this is the earliest
This is the earliest
phase.
And in this phase, I suspect the room was being used very much as part of the bathhouse, for the use of the bathhouse as a hot room, and that when the mosaic was put down, possibly the use of the room had changed somewhat.
That there would have formed the base, the floor of the bath, and here's the edge along there.
That's the quarter-round moulding, yes. This has been totally waterproof.
And at the bottom of the bath?
No, this is not in situ. This has been ripped out
Yes.
and just dumped.
But this isn't quite as fancy as a mosaic, though, is it? So it's a bit of a cheaper version,
it's
is
just
it?
plain. But yes, but it's waterproof, so it's vital.
Yeah.
Undeterred by failing to find a springhead, John's at it again.
Hey, 25 past 5 and still the geophysics
Worth
covered.
waiting for, though. Look at this. We've got the whole landscape now magnetically. Here's the scheduled villa, a series of prehistoric enclosures surrounding it. Then we've got this avenue that we saw yesterday. Now it appears to connect the 2 fields with the possible shrine down here. We still don't really know.
Yeah.
And then in this field, sort of bathhouse fields, as we've been calling it, look at the resistance results. There's the stream, just
Right.
orientate. There's the plunge pool, there's the trench with the mosaic. Look, we've got a whole new range. corridors, rooms, absolutely fantastic. And basically it extends up the hillside there. And even more exciting, look at the scale. It's actually larger than the scheduled villa up there.
So is it another villa?
It looks like it, doesn't it?
It's got to be.
2,000 years ago, there would have been many more people living in this landscape. Based on our finds, it looks as if a modest range of farm buildings, including a bathhouse, was in use by the river just after the Roman occupation in 43 AD. This settlement grew into a larger and more affluent complex with its own piped running water, but it would have been vulnerable to flooding. So perhaps it was the same family that built the villa that Lysons discovered further up the hill on the site of some other prehistoric farm buildings. This later villa almost eluded us, but no one could have predicted the quality and the significance of the other discoveries we made.
We came here because of a handful of tesserae in this field, but we found this amazing bathhouse. Once Romans would have sat among these beautiful mosaics sweating, then they would have sprinted over to Phil's plunge pool to cool off and exchange the gossip of the day. But this being Time Team, in the last few minutes we've been handed this. It's geophys of yet another villa up on this slope here. It's bigger than Lysons' original discovery and part of a huge Roman complex.
Hello, my name's John Gator. Time Team is fan funded by Patreon. This vital support helps us to make new episodes. Joining Patreon gives you access to exclusive interviews, 3D models and masterclasses, plus lots more.